Hey guys, this is Zane. Today I'm just going to show you a really simple way to generate an interesting weave pattern through the use of the Add Curves add-on. So let's dive in. So I'm just here in Blender 2.92 to begin with. We've just got a basic scene with a light and a camera. We're going to go into Edit, Preferences, search for Extra. As this add-on comes with Blender, you shouldn't need to install it, and enable the Add Curve Extra Objects. So once that's done, we can then go Shift A and then go to Curve, Knots, and come down where we've got some options. Now, while these curves are really cool to basically just play around with and I guess adjust, you can adjust the different vertices and play with how they look. The real power from this Add Curves add-on comes in the fact that you can apply this to a mesh. So if we delete these and we come in here, create a UV sphere, which I'll just scale up an arbitrary amount and apply the scale. And then we come here, selecting the object, go Shift A, Curve, Knots, and now we've got Celtic links enabled. So that then basically enables us to generate Celtic links all around the object. And we've got the option to create a weave up and a weave down, along with adjusting the bevel depth of this curve. So if we turn up our sphere here, we can now see that we've got a really nice weave pattern all across the sphere. And we can bring it into rendered mode. And look, it's just a really nice, simple way to create really interesting patterns across nearly any mesh. So I'm just loading up Make Human here to basically create another mesh that we can use. Here we have our Make Human. We're just going to play around with some small sliders here. Go over to the Pose Animate tab, create Default Pose. So I've got this add-on here that enables you to import a human directly into Blender, and it automatically syncs up this Make Human. So click Import Human here, and there we go. We've got a really nice base mesh that we can work with. So if we click on the mesh, go Shift A, Curve, come down, and let's try a Spyro Fit. So what the Spyro Fit enables you to do is basically create a whole range of curves that kind of just hang off the model and just fit around it. And it does a whole bunch of different things like raycasting. Like this could be a great way to create spider webs or other just interesting geometry across your model. We've got some settings for the randomization, wave intensity. I mean, honestly, you should just play around with these settings to get a feel for what works for you. And once that's done, we can also add a bevel radius to this object. So that'll give it a little bit of thickness, maybe even a little bit smaller, 0.001. So by just adding material in here for an emission, changing to our rendered view after switching to our camera, we've got just this really interesting look of these kind of squiggles that follow our character. So the beautiful thing with this is that we can basically just continue to create a whole range of different curves and weaves and just basically play with them. So I'm going to create a plane here that we can use to serve as our backdrop and potentially move this camera down a bit. If you press double R, that enables you to rotate the camera just using the mouse, and G along with the middle mouse button to zoom in and out, and GZ to move down, RR. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. We've got a 200 focal length, so we'll make that a bit larger and adjust the scene accordingly. Extrude these up, control our scale through Control A, press Tab to go into edit mode, and we'll bevel these. So now we've basically got a really simple way to create a nice studio lighting setup. We're going to change this to a principal BSDF just so that we can basically get a nicer look. Maybe bump up to a metallic. So we've been working with weaves, so why not let's make a weave across the rest of this mesh. So we can come in here and select our outer mesh, go Shift A, Curve, Knots, Celtic links. Now you see here we've got a pretty interesting thing with the way it basically distributes itself across the mesh. So if we restore defaults, yeah, now this isn't going to work for what we want. So if we select these faces, we can right click and subdivide. And this can basically enable us to generate enough geometry that we can then work with it with our weave texture. So, sorry, I've turned on the wireframe here so that you can see what was happening. But if we come in here again to go curve, knots, and Celtic links, we now have this really just interesting pattern going across the whole of our scene that's based off geometry that we're working with. And it's just such a simple method compared to the other methods I've seen on the internet, where they basically want you to create kind of base meshes that you duplicate or use arrays to kind of work with. This is just so much of a simpler way. So there's also the Blender Kit add-on, which you should have enabled by now if you don't. And this can basically enable you to get any materials that you could ever want. And they're all really easy to access. You just click a few buttons and you've got access to both models and materials. And this is how I've been creating my renders every day, is by using tools like this to really speed up my workflows. Because without finding solutions like this, it could take you ages to actually create what you want to create. Okay, so just the last thing for the scene is adding some depth of field. So if I create plane axes here, I can basically focus this camera on that empty and use that to create a really nice depth of field that can just kind of bring our character out from the background. Alright, so just one last thing I want to add when generating these curves is that you need to keep in mind where your selection cursor is, as that's going to influence where these curves are. So at the moment, our cursor is at the world origin, and we've generated some of these balls using that. So that means that our origin point is near that world origin, which in turn means that when we're doing our scaling or rotation of the object, it's not going to be along the right axis. So in order to fix that, what we do is we click on the object that we want, so that being this sphere, and we go Shift S and go cursor to selected. So now that cursor is going to be on that mesh, and therefore the curve that we're generating is going to be around that origin point because it inherits its origin point from that selection cursor. And we can just yet again go Shift A, knots, and this time we'll go for a spline fit, and there we go. We've got a nice curve. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped. If you want to see more of my work, you can follow me over at Zany Baloney on Instagram. Yost and I will be posting videos here weekly where we can kind of showcase our different disciplines in Cinema 4D, Blender, Unreal Engine, and a range of other different softwares and AI enhancements to accelerate your workflows. If you're interested in that, please subscribe.